Hey, Mythic Fam. I'm happy to be back recording, and thank you all for joining me on this podcast adventure. This is Weird Mythic Podcast. Today's episode is about cats, kind of about cats. I'll be talking mainly about like ancient Egyptians and how they like worshipped cats or thought very highly of them. And then I'm also going to talk about medieval Europe, mainly like medieval England, and how they viewed cats, because there's a couple of things there that's pretty fun. Plus other weird, odd things that I came across about cats. So might have to do another episode of cats if I'm being completely honest with you. But but let me go ahead and get one thing out of the way, uh, as quick as I can do it. So this episode is actually dedicated to my cat, Louie. I actually had to say goodbye to him October 30th, so just a few months ago. He was damn near 16 years old. I got him in March in 2009. So, I mean, he was basically 16. Okay. He went through four different types of like homes with me. And boyfriends, multiple fucking jobs, cars, and yeah, I think he actually even like interrupted the show a few times, so I might have kept that in a few of the episodes. And I know Serena and I talked about it a few times. So, but I just want to get that out of the way and just say that this is definitely dedicated to my cat, King Louie. And so, yeah, let's get that out of the way. Thank you. Let's go ahead and get into it, okay? So, Egypt. This is where my mind always goes when I first think of cats, felines, or any type of, cat worship, really. The ancient Egyptians treated their pets very well. Some, if not all pets, were treated as royalty. And it's believed that if you had a pet cat and treated it well, that the goddess Bastet would bring you luck. Cats were not just pampered, they were used as pest control also. Much like today with barn cats, ancient Egyptians also had cats that would get rid of mice, rats, any types of rodents or small animal that could possibly be a nuisance. Cats were seen as protectors and symbols of magic. Egyptologist Julia Troche, I could totally be mispronouncing her name, has a great quote on animals in ancient Egypt. Quote, animals were not worshipped in Egypt. Rather, they saw animals as representations of divine aspects of their gods. Unquote. In this sense, if you had like a pet cat, it was pretty much you had a pet god. This was Bastet in physical form, basically. Kind of creepy. The whole like reminds me of almost like God is everywhere kind of thing, or Bastet is just chilling as a cat next to you. But what's good about that is that she brings you good luck. She's a protector of the household, so it's always good. And I think we all can agree that cats are just great companions in general, and great pest control. And of course, this was something that the Egyptians also believed in. They were not necessarily worshipped in ancient Egypt, but it was believed that they had the divine energy and, as I said, like a vessel, as a vessel of the cat for the god. All cats have the divinity of Bastet in them, representing fertility, domesticity, music, and pleasure. Cat jewelry was often worn for protection, and new mothers would wear cats like pendants of Bastet or of a cat amulet that would bring her luck, to herself and her children during birth. And it does not surprise me that cats are also associated with fertility because they reproduce quicker than rabbits, I believe. So yeah. Also, if I sound a little odd, like I'm stuffed up, it's because I just got done being sick. So, but I just have a residual cough that should not affect, but I might sound a little under the weather, but I'm just getting over it. I read in an article that Egyptian royalty made cats trendy. Once the small folk saw them putting gold on their cats, jewelry, and what have you, they too started to put necklaces on their cats to show how much they were adored. If you had a cat in this life, you would also have that same cat in the next life. I believe it was in the documentary Secrets of the Saqqara Tomb where I learned any cat that had passed was mummified out of respect, but especially those that were owned, that had an owner, that owner would mummify the cat when it passed and put it in a tomb where eventually even the owner would take that cat with them to their own tomb and they were laid to rest. I read it in a couple places that when an owner's cat would pass, the owner would shave their eyebrows and they would continue to mourn their cat until the eyebrows grew back. So I only saw that in a couple places. I thought it was very interesting though. I don't think I could shave my eyebrows. Don't think I could do it. Prince Tutmos had a pet cat named Ta Mew, which according to Egypt, according to the Egypt Museum website, that translates to she cat, which I think is now that would be Mao. So Ta Mao. When Ta Mao had passed away, a sarcophagus was made for her, and she was buried in the same area where Prince Tutmos would eventually, be laid to rest in his own sarcophagus. Tut Mao sarcophagus is in the Cairo Museum, and her sarcophagus dates back to 1300 BCE. There was a prosecution, if you killed cats, you would be prosecuted for that. Even if you accidentally, possibly accidentally killed a cat, you would actually be sentenced to death in some situations in ancient Egypt. Egyptologist Julia Troche, who, if, like I said, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that last name right, quote, in some mortuary texts, they are shown with a dagger cutting through Apis, which is the snake deity who threatens Ra, unquote, the sun god, of course. Cats love the sun and will attack snakes. Like, I've even seen cats attack snakes. I know of a cat. I had an orange cat named Stuck when I was a kid. He was a family cat who did attack a rattlesnake. So I'm like, cats will attack snakes. And of course, Louie and all cats love to sunbathe. Like, they will just lay in the one nice spot in the house where it gets all the sun. Put your plants where your cats lay down. And my plants freak out like in the sun. So just saying, keep that in mind. So, cats love the sun and would attack snakes. And she mentions this just by looking at ancient drawings and paintings and descriptions of cats. In the tomb of Nevamun, there is a painting of a cat who is out fishing with Nevamun. And that cat is shown with a bird in its mouth while trying to catch other birds. And I do have that picture on like social media. It's actually really hella cute. I believe ancient Egyptians loved their cats, loved felines. I also believe that they were scared of them. My reason is from a story that I read of a Persian king named Cabisius, this Persian king, who was going into battle against the Egyptians. The Persian king knew that the Egyptians worshipped Bastet, the lioness-headed goddess, and how they treated their pet cats. So Cabisius used that against them by sending out hordes of cats before his army against the Egyptians. He also had other domestic animals in there, but it was mainly cats apparently, which made the Egyptians just not attack the cats, which probably made them more vulnerable. Not to mention how confused they must have been when they saw a horde of cats running at them. So just saying, it was very distracting, and they didn't do anything to really come against that Persian prince, I guess. And there was this other story of the Assyrians when they went into battle against the Egyptians. The Assyrians noticed that their bows and quivers were like getting chewed on and eaten as they were like on their way into battle or as they were waiting to go to the next battle in Egypt. Apparently that was just because there was rats and mice everywhere. The Egyptians traveled with their cats, so they actually never had any issues with rodents as they traveled either, or going into battle. Ancient Egyptians had 7 species of cats. Big cats, like lions and cheetahs. They had several servals. I kept wanting to say servals, and coracles, and even like the domestic hairless cat. So they did have a lot of different varieties of cats. And I do believe there was always the rumors of like royalty owning, big cats, say panthers. Well, maybe not panthers, but lions and cheetahs and shit. So, yeah. Um, One of my favorite things is that the word for cat in Egyptian is Mao or Mew. And I just love that that's even like that's the sound they make. And that's great that that's the name. So let's go ahead and switch over and get into some like mythology around felines and lions in ancient Egypt. There is the lioness cat goddesses. There are more than one, and all of them are connected to the sun god Ra. They are all unpredictable but caring. The goddess Bastet. She had the power to transform from human to cat. Bastet is the daughter of the sun god Ra and Isis. Early depictions of Bastet show her as a human with a lioness head. Later, she is shown with more of like a house cat's type of head instead of a lioness. Some depictions of Bastet as the house cat will show her with kittens. Now, this shows her being the protector and nurturing. Having Bastet with kittens also promotes the thought of like motherly instincts, so that type of protection in a household. When you would see a statue of Bastet with her kittens in a household, it was a way for the family to ask Bastet for healthy children and, like I said, protection over them. There was a whole city also dedicated to Bastet. The city of Bubastis, and I should have Google translated this, but I'm pretty notorious for just not doing that and just going for it when I read it. So this was the hub for Bastet worship. The temple of Bastet was there. This is where everyone would go to pay their respects to the goddess, looking for luck on fertility and, again, for protection of their children. This temple was known for just its sheer beauty. There was this decorated door that they do have. I don't know if I have it in here where it's at. It might actually still be there, like, gated off and shit. There's a decorated door that was at the temple that actually dated back to 2800 BCE, and it is a carving of Bastet and her goddess sister Hathor, both women's bodies and their respected animal heads, which, if I remember correctly, Hathor is the cow, or yeah, the cow. So, it was not the biggest like temple, but it was the main attraction in the city for anyone coming to Bubastis. Which was a major city in ancient Egypt between the years of 943 and 716 BCE. And I even read in one article that it happened to be the capital of Egypt at one time. Not only was the city the place to go worship Bastet and visit her temple, but it was also a place to party. There was a big cult of Bastet in the city, obviously. So there was a lot of processions in honor of the goddess Bastet. Many parties are dedicated to the lioness-headed goddess, and in modern times, while archaeologists were doing their thing, like digging up the Egyptian desert in the city, they found a temple with so many mummified cats that just kind of proved how much the city worshipped Bastet. There was a very well-known festival that was dedicated to Bastet in the city as late into the years 450 BCE. Like a giant like party all weekend, all dedicated to the goddess, just all in the city. And I believe it was in that Saqqara tomb documentary where archaeologists found thousands of mummified cats and even discovered a mummified lion club, which it was really, really exciting to watch because as somebody who we all kind of had like an Egyptian thing, right? As a kid, like we did all the research we could on mummies and whatnot, but there was always like, there's mummified lions, there's got to be mummified this, mummified that. They have found mummified crocodiles, but in this documentary was the first time they ever have evidence of a mummified lion. Even though it's a cub, it's still a huge discovery, and it was the first one ever found. And I can't remember what streaming service it's on, but I'll have it in the show notes where to watch the documentary. It's great. There is a necropolis from ancient Egypt that is now known as the Theban necropolis. which I'll have to do an episode on for the Necropolis series that I'm gonna do. Or I think I already done one or two, but yeah. So in the tomb of a noble Egyptian priest, believed that the name is Pumer, there is a depiction of a cat named Nedjem, which translates to the pleasant one, which is just too freaking cute for a cat. The tomb dates back to 1450 BCE. In comparison to the city of Bastet, the Theban necropolis has just as many depictions and art of cats as any other place in Egypt. There are cats hunting birds, fish, and sometimes sitting under a chair. Sometimes they are tied to the chair like from a leash. The goddess Mut is shown with cats in some parts of the necropolis, and Mut is another lion-headed goddess. Now, the most famous piece of art from the necropolis comes from the tomb of Nebamun, where a cat is seen with a person catching a duck. This is for sure an orange cat with a bird in its back paw still trying to catch birds, and it's actually really cute also. I might have that on social media. I don't remember if I have that photo or not. There's other limestone artifacts that show cat with mice, and I even saw a photo of a cat and a mouse like fighting each other with which looked like sticks, and that was just kind of comical. As I said, there are other ancient Egyptian goddesses with cat or feline heads. Mut was one of the ones that I just mentioned. Tefnut, Shesamiti, Peket, Mafdet, Wajet, and Sekhmut. And as I said in the beginning, all are the daughters of the sun god Ra. So I'm going to just mention one other. We talked about Bastet a lot. So I wanted to kind of talk about Sekhmut, who has a really interesting story. So she also has a lioness head as associated with that goddess. She is the goddess of destruction. And this actually includes plagues and natural disasters. So she can actually make these natural disasters, make these plagues, but she can also take them away at the same time. The opposite of Bastet, really, the goddess who was of a protector. The sun god Ra has sent Sekhmut to the humans at one point. She was sent to destroy them. And the reason behind that is kind of the same reason why the Christian God put the flood on everyone, was because humans were being trashed pretty much. So Ra wanted to get rid of the trash and destroy humans. We're so wicked. Sekhmut did go down and or come up, or wherever they were, came up to the humans and killed so many. And Sekhmut kind of started to destroy the land that was around us too. And other gods saw how Sekhmut was really just doing way too much and just going on a rampage. The other gods went to Ra to have him stop this madness, thinking that Sekhmut was about to take out all of humanity. Ra then got a vat of beer, dyed it red, which then attracted Sekhmut, who then went to the vat of beer and drank it all, apparently. So she was attracted to blood, so that's why he dyed it red. And then she just downed it and passed out. So Sekhmut, when she came out of her, passing out, she woke up and she was actually with her sister Hathor, who I've mentioned before, who was able to calm her down. And humans were safe from then on. Cats in ancient Egypt were worshipped out of love and fear, I think. The ancient Egyptians had to appease the lion goddesses, welcoming cats into their homes, pampering them. We have polar opposite goddesses also, Sekhmut and Bastet. So you could fear one and respect them both at the same time, but asking, one for protection. Sekhmut, for me, seemed to be the more wild, out of control side of the cats, just constant zoomies, okay, just constantly going. While Bastet is more loving and motherly, who won't let anything happen to her kittens. Both are represented with lioness heads and female bodies. Bastet had a much bigger cult following out of all the feline goddesses in ancient Egypt. But not all ancient people loved cats. I remember just history classes or documentaries and shit about how medieval Europeans didn't necessarily care for cats. And so really started the whole thinking that cats were associated with the devil or witchcraft and witches. So I figured I might as well look into this, right? And I just kind of personally want to say medieval Europe just doesn't sound like a place I really want to visit. Maybe for like a few hours, like on the outside and they don't see me. And I could just like kind of walk around and check it out. But I feel like it would just stink all the time. People didn't have good hygiene, at all. And if they did like try to practice hygiene, sometimes today's world we're like, no, why would you do that? So it sounds gross. So I just kind of want to put that out there. I don't care for it. Just thinking like real historically about how it probably was. But something interesting about medieval Europe is that if you owned an animal, especially like an exotic animal, like as a pet, this would actually help with your social status. Exotic pets such as monkeys showed that the owner is wealthy, and to have one like imported and keeping it fed all the time is, very much a luxury. Keeping a pet that was showered with attention and given better food than even the poor would show a high status of a person. There is evidence that some medieval Europeans and wealthy families would give their cats cheese. The 14th century French queen, Isabeau of Bavaria, spent excessive amounts on her pets. She had a collar with pearls and gold for a pet squirrel, and a bright green cloth that was specifically made for her pet cat. Pet animals are seen in a lot of portraits and paintings in the Middle Ages, and these paintings actually showed like a domestication of a family at that time. Cats were a popular companion, though, to medieval scholars, stating like going as early back as the 16th century. Some 16th century, I spelled that word wrong on my script, but some 16th century writers show how much they were like cared for. The writers and scholars of that time would actually write eulogies dedicated to their cats and how they were always there to just cheer them up and they could always count on their cat being there. Just calm them down and relax. But at some point in like between like the 12 and 1400s and kind of kept going actually, but this is where it started was like in the 1200s, cats kind of started to get a bad rap in medieval times. Preacher John Bromyard thought cats were useless and only benefited the rich, which I mean, in this time kind of sounds like it, but were an accessory to the rich while the poor went hungry. And I want to mention that there are many, many paintings of cats with nuns. So I'm not quite sure how Preacher John felt about that. But, we got to keep the mice away. This was during the time when the church was saying that cats do the devil's work and are associated with witches. English writer Walter Map believed cats helped in satanic rituals, stating, quote, "The devil descends as a black cat before his devotees. The worshippers put out the light and draw near to the place where they saw their master. They feel after him and they have him. They kiss under the tail," unquote. Yeah. So he's pretty much saying that witches would kiss cat butts to have the devil come out. Is that what I'm hearing? Because that's what it sounds like. No, I don't believe anybody would ever do that. Have the link to that quote in the show notes if you want to check it out. The Catholic Church in the 1200s started accusing other Christian sects of cat worship, in which of course would lead to devil worship, and they had to get rid of that. The church wanted to be rid of all the other Christian sects that just didn't go with what the bishops and the Pope and everybody was saying. There were still different, groups that believed in Jesus and believed in the Christian God, but didn't necessarily follow the church. So they wanted to get rid of all of that. And we need to remember that the Catholic Church had most of the power over the crown at this time, if not all of it. And the church really did just wanted to have their rules on that religion just going. Anyways, the two Christian groups that were really accused of cat worship were the Cathars and the Waldensians. Both, both were persecuted by the church and forced to fight for their beliefs. I will get into both of those groups in another episode. I have it written down to do an episode on them because I started going down a rabbit hole and almost derived from the cat stuff. So, just say it. It's very fucking interesting. Anyways, those were the two main groups, and it was a lot of fights and, Christian army here fighting against each other. So it was very interesting, but they specifically went over both of them. Now, this helped egg on the rumor that cats were associated with witchcraft and that some witches, mainly women, could shapeshift into a cat. In 1484, Pope Innocent VIII declared that cats were the devil's favorite animal. This is the same pope who also denounced the beliefs in the Waldensians and offered a reward to those who would engage in war or battles against them. He also approved of slavery for anyone against the Christian God and approved the prosecution of witches in Germany. I think he used witchcraft to scare Christians, and it obviously worked. And in the year 1320, a woman was accused by her stepchildren as a witch. Alice Kittler was her name. She was a wealthy Irish woman who married a man, and then shortly after the marriage, the man got really sick and passed away. The man's children believed the stepmom Alice used witchcraft to murder their dad. The bishop in that town was Kilkenny, believed that the entire area was just full of witches. So he was, gotta get him out. And he made Alice Kittler the focus of him ridding Kilkenny of witchcraft. Alice was accused of sorcery by having intercourse with an incubus that shapeshifts into a cat. Apparently people saw that. Yeah. Well, Alice, she was actually like a good person and a very, not like prominent, but people really respected her. And she had her wealth before even this guy was her second husband. Anyways, she went to jail for this and only had a trial. But because she was a good person and there was no evidence of her being a witch besides this rumor, she wasn't dead. So good for her. Good for being a good person. There was really no evidence of it. So I think after reading a couple articles on her, it sounded like these kids just wanted their dad's money because even though she was rich and got more money and they didn't get some, so that sounds like for me, but whatever. So witch trials starting then. Now, some in medieval Europe would observe cats and see how easily they could catch a mouse, and then they would compare that to the devil and how easily the devil could get a human soul. How cats can play with a mouse and have fun and then eat it, and then the devil can do the same thing to us, apparently. It is believed by many scholars that since cats were associated with the devil, that many people would just kill cats. This did lead to a small population of cats at one time. Now, this then led to more diseases being spread, like the Black Death, which came from fleas, which were on rats and mice. Now, if there were more cats in the area, there could have been less people dying because they would have been eating the rats that had the lice and fleas that had the Black Death. So, it's food for thought. Cats in medieval Europe did serve a purpose, though, of getting rid of a lot of mice out of homes and businesses, but not many families would have a pet cat. They were sort of a nuisance if you didn't own one. Cats are very ballsy, would legit go to bakeries or places that had food or even homes and just try to steal food right off the plate or the hot pan. An interesting thought, though, from a writer named Irina, Irina, Metzler. Medieval people believed that all creatures were put on earth by God to be ruled over humans. And she believed that cats kind of challenged this idea. And I really like that idea also. The fact that cats are independent and you can't really domesticate them and make them dependent on you like you could a domesticated farm animal or dog. So cats weren't obedient and kind of challenged that in a lot of eyes of Christians. So maybe they had to be associated with the devil at that point. Cats did go on voyages to Americas, by the way. When they came over to us here in the Americas, Um, yeah, so they got rid of mice and rats on boats and survived, and there's one reason why we have small cats here now. So there's also artifacts found in ancient Greece. They have many images of cats. Most scholars believe most scholars believe the Greeks got a lot of their cat inspiration after traveling to Egypt, and that makes total sense. Ancient Greeks called their cats mousers, which cracks me up because I used to call Louis a mouser all the time, like easily my mouser, and he did get mice. And like not in my apartment, obviously, but when I lived where I used to live was out in the country and he would get mice. And I didn't know that was a Greek thing until reading it, so that made me laugh. So before the ancient Greeks used cats to eat the mice and rats, they would actually employ ferrets or even snakes to get rid of rodents. Stories of the Egyptian goddess Bastet did make their way to Greece. And even there's this port in Rome where there's an inscription that's dedicated to a priestess of the cult of Bastet. There's also the Temple of Diana, and there's actually like a record book of what was offered to the goddess Isis and Bastet, mainly silk, water vessels, gold. So in short, cats were loved and adored in ancient Egypt. They were treated with respect and maybe even spoiled more than they should have been. Ancient Egyptians also worshipped goddesses that had the head of a feline or a cat. The biggest ancient group that worshipped cats and even mummified them so they could be buried with their owners to go to the afterlife. Medieval Europeans had a love-hate relationship with cats. They knew that they were good pest control, but the church's twisted thinking made a lot of people believe in medieval times that cats were the devil's pet and helped aid in witchcraft, and they weren't obedient like dogs, so they were work of the devil. So yeah, thank you guys again for joining me on this episode. And before I leave you, I wanted to mention that there is a festival in 2027. It happens every 3 years in Belgium. It's called the Festival of Cats. Just let me talk about this for a quick second. Its origins go back to 1200s, 1300s CE. The city of Ypres had a big cloth market at that time, and they used cats to keep the mice and rats from eating the cloth. However, it's not like they had like vets and ways to spay and neuter the cats. So cats procreated very fast. And those in the cloth facility and in the town would take one day out of the year where they would trigger warning, throw cats from the buildings to be rid of the population, which did work. But yeah, that was very horrible. But this happened for years, like I want to say over 100 years. I read in some articles. This, of course, stopped fairly quickly. I mean, hundreds of years, but maybe 100 years. I don't know. Either way, it was still a long time, but short amount of time in history. Anyways, in today's world, people now have a 3-day festival in Belgium. Is that where it was? Let me double check again. Yes, Belgium. Yeah, Festival of Cats. So today, what they do is a jester actually dresses up in old medieval jester outfit, goes to the top of buildings and throws fake, stuffed animal cats down. There's a parade. There's, people in costume. It's a big festival, and it's actually now to celebrate cats and, pay homage to them and how much they do care about their furry friends. I also saw in an article that there's also a mock witch burning because it's in the same time period of the festival. But I did not see that in the brochure for the festival in 2027. And I do have the link to that in the show notes. The best thing I think about cats is that they practically self-domesticated themselves. I'm not quite sure how long ago archaeologists believe this. I read some that it was 10,000 years ago that they must have self-domesticated, but I feel like that's not correct. So I couldn't really find a specific date, but a lot of scientists and, people who study animals do believe that cats did self-domesticate themselves. But you won't see like any cave paintings really of primitive people with cats unless it's more of a predator. They will have like a domesticated dog possibly on the cave painting, but you won't see a domesticated cat. So we got to take that into consideration and see when that happens. Thank you again for listening to my cats episode dedicated to Louie. Let me know your thoughts on the episode and maybe if I should do another one on like, cats in I want to go like further south in Africa and do like maybe South America or something. So that would be pretty cool. So send me your ideas, send me your comments, anything weirdmythicpodcast@gmail.com. I will answer your messages. Also, don't forget to like and follow me on Instagram at Weird Mythic Podcast, Twitter, Weird Mythic, TikTok, Weird Mythic, YouTube, Weird Mythic Podcast. Don't forget to go to my link tree. There's still Weird Mythic merch out there if you do want to help support. So thank you, and I hope you have an amazing week. Bye.